What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Like me, I'm sure all of you are patiently awaiting Season 1 for the First Descendant, and we know that with this patch, with the start of Season 1, we will be getting at the very least 2 new Descendants right at the start there. One brand new Ascendant focused on chill, which is basically like a massive railgun, and then of course we are getting the ultimate version of Freyna. Now in this video today, I don't want to specifically be talking about any builds for Freyna, but rather the prep work that you can do right now to give yourself the right reactor, the right weapons, and the right external components, so that when ultimate Freyna drops, you can essentially have all of that stuff ready to go, and you can focus on leveling her, and you'll have a head start to get your character as strong as possible. Now, I was originally planning on releasing this video over the weekend. However, something that I saw with regards to reactor farm for this week made me think that I need to get this out as soon as possible, because we have one small-ish problem. So let's start off firstly by talking about reactors. Now, the reactor that you're looking for on Freyna is a toxic mechanics reactor. Ideally, you want an ultimate reactor, aka a yellow/gold one, because you want the full 160, and you want it to be mounted to one of the weapons that we're also going to be discussing in this video. But if you are looking to have a reactor that's really good at bossing, you want to have the additional damage to Colossus there, and possibly either crit rate like I have, or additional crit damage. Those are both really good. And then if you are going to be primarily just using your Freyna to do a lot of mobbing, then of course you can drop the additional attack to Colossus and maybe replace it with a crit hit rate, crit hit damage, or something like that. So the bottom line is we want to be doing toxic mechanics, and this week we can actually farm toxic mechanics. But specifically, we can farm toxic mechanics in the special rounds configuration. And this is really important, and I want you to remember this for later on in the video. But this means that we can get exactly what we're looking for. So just to show you, we're gonna go toxic, we're gonna go tech, and that gives us Muskeg Swamp. Now just quickly, the reason why we take tech, of course, is because when we look at her abilities, we can see that all of the ones which deal damage, like Venom Trauma, Putrid Venom, and Venom Baptism, are all tech skills. So you definitely want a tech reactor that is the right one to go with. So again, just taking us back here to the map, and so Muskeg Swamp gives us toxic and tech, and then with a possible mounting of special rounds. Now, this is this area in Echo Swamp, and the best option for you here out of the possible missions, I mean, technically anything that you kill in this area will have a chance of dropping that kind of reactor for you. That's how these reactor farms work. But to give yourself an opportunity to possibly get a few more from one area, you can run the Tree of Truth mission. Now, while there's not a massive amount of reactors that drop during this is one of those missions very much like what we do when we go over here to those of you that are familiar with the shipment-based White Knight Gulch, where we do Fortress Outskirts, and essentially you activate all the pads, and then those pads are reinforced by enemies, and those enemies will basically keep spawning as long as the pads are active. You can use that time to essentially just run around and pretty much just like let as many enemies accumulate as possible in the amount of time that you have available, and then kill those enemies, and hopefully you can get a bunch of these reactors to drop. Now, as mentioned, these all will drop with the special rounds configuration, and that is what you want, because your best in slot weapon for Freyna happens to be a special rounds weapon. Now, the reason why this information is super important regarding the reactor, and why you should get to farming this as soon as possible up until next week Tuesday, when we have a shift to the next schedule, is that when we look and we see toxic looks like this, and the tech icon is this little circle over here, right? So when we look at the schedule for next week, which is this over here, we will find that there is no rolling of toxic and then special rounds, and then actually that symbol there, which indicates tech. So this is the problem. Next week we should be able to farm a general rounds version of this, which is not bad. We have 2 general rounds guns, which are also kind of good for Freyna, and definitely better than not having anything. But your best bet is to farm this week and possibly get yourself a binding, or rather a mounting, for specifically the Secret Garden. This gives us a good chance to actually move into the weapons that you should be looking out for with Freyna. Now, specifically when it comes to Freyna, in my opinion, there's really only 3 choices, and it actually depends on what you want to do with the character. If you are aiming to use Freyna for mobbing only and doing like open world content, farming, special operations and that sort of thing, and not necessarily taking her to fight void intercept bosses, you will be fine with using the Fallen Hope, or let's just say Fallen Hope, or the Secret Garden, depending on which one of these two you have farmed up and geared the best. Fallen Hope is not nearly as good as Secret Garden, and I'll explain why just now, but the point is that having either one of these two above something else is absolutely, preferred. Now let's talk about Fallen Hope first. Fallen Hope is considered to be a weapon specifically for Freyna, and that's because when you look at the unique ability of Fallen Hope, basically this is specifically working around a poison system, and essentially what Fallen Hope does, perdition, the effect itself, is when you kill enemies that have poison on them and those enemies die, they explode and they pass that poison around. Now you'll recognize this effect because this is literally something that Freyna's skills do already. So if you are beefing up your Freyna and building her up and actually building in a bunch of Descendant modules into her and actually turning her into a mobbing character, you're going to find that Fallen Hope is actually overkill. You do not need the additional assistance of that, especially once you start using the Transcendent mod, which is perfect for this, named Contagion. Now Contagion does pretty much kind of like the same thing. So you can see it says when an enemy inflicted by room 0 trauma, which is her poison effect, is killed, there's a contagion of poison surrounding it. This is actually the superior effect to something like Fallen Hope. So as mentioned, Fallen Hope is really good, but because we build our Freyna already for being good at mobbing, if we want to use a gun like Fallen Hope is like an add-on effect on top of it, which is kind of like overkill. Now the better option, and probably the best in slot for her right now, is Secret Garden. Once again, because Secret Garden has a really cool additional effect here. So how Secret Garden works is that you have essentially two things that can occur depending on which skill you use. If you use a dimension skill, you will recover some custom resources. And if you use a tech skill, then it will activate a unique ability called Pest Control. Now, let me remove my face here quickly so we can actually look at the figures here just for the point of the discussion. So what Pest Control does is essentially it has a chance to trigger and it has some stacks. These are of course increased by having better versions of the Secret Garden. So of course the idea is to level this up to max so you get these stats to be as high as possible. But basically once this triggers, and it can stack 3 times, this increases your firearm attack, which means your bullets hit harder, but it also increases your skill power. So as you can see, this is a phenomenal addition to her already strong kit, because this basically just makes everything that she's really good at, meaning like poisoning the entire map and watching them all die from dots, that much more effective. Now both of these weapons are really good for the mobbing variant of Freyna, but if you're looking to build a bossing version of her, you are going to have to use a different gun. Now generally speaking, the bossing version of Freyna uses the 4th skill, Venom Baptism, which in a way can be thought of as being something similar to what Lepic does. Lepic changes his arm into a big cannon and essentially shoots, and that cannon can inherit some stats from your weapon, namely fire rate. Now Venom Baptism is kind of like the same thing. It makes a brand new gun, and this brand new gun inherits some of the things from your mods on your weapons, which I will explain just now. Now basically the bossing variant of Freyna in the game right now uses a very specific module. It is this one over here, Neurotoxin Synthesis, and what this does is it actually makes that your room 0 trauma doesn't spread poison anymore. So your poison, ticks doesn't spread anymore, but what it does do is it adds a debuff essentially on it for when you hit the enemy, aka the Void Intercept boss, that reduces its attack and weakens its regeneration. So this, for example, is really good against something like Devourer. Not that you need it, Devourer is a bitch. But the point is Neurotoxin Synthesis on your character, and then using a weapon with a fairly large magazine size, which is super important. So if we go over here and we just check our mods, having expand weapon charge on there, and basically additional mods that increase your size of your so we can just say a magazine any of these, a combination of these mods, so something like weapon tuning alongside expand weapon charge would be really good, giving you as many bullets inside the weapon as possible. And then using something like sharp precision shot, which will also speed up your shots, meaning that you deliver your full payload of fucking rounds into the enemy as fast as possible, thereby killing them. That is the only things which the weapon inherits, and that's the reason why we want to use something with a big magazine and a fast fire rate over something like Secret Garden, because the whole reason why we want Secret Garden in the mobbing setup is because we want that cool unique ability, which the 4 skill of Freyna, when you activate it, does not take over. Very much the same as Lepic's 4 skill Overkill, not taking the unique stats of a weapon across. So TLDR, make sure you get yourself one of these 3 weapons. I chose Enduring Legacy because it is just a really strong machine gun by default, but of course any other machine gun can also work here. You just want a big magazine. So those of you that have juiced up Tamers, for example, Tamer can also work here really well. The bottom line is you want something with a big magazine and you're basically good to go. Then last but not least, we need to talk external components, and actually here you have a couple of choices available to you. So first of all, if we just go over here and we look at our external components, there is a set in the game that is pretty much made for Freyna, or at the very least it seems to be that way, and that is the Venom Essence set. So this set, first of all, can be obtained by killing hard mode Swamp Walker, and as you can see, it has a 2 set bonus which gives you additional toxic skill power, and then it has a 4 set bonus which gives you a bunch of additional damage based on how many enemies are poisoned and so on. And this is a phenomenally good set if you're looking to build your Freyna in the mobbing setup. So in other words, you never want to fight any bosses or anything like that. You want to use this to do special operations, open world content, to, you know, do some of the outposts and that sort of thing, because you will be absolutely burning through those guys like butter. Then another really good set for her is of course Annihilation. Annihilation drops from Devourer, and so therefore with the amount of Devourer kills that you should have under your belt, you're gonna have quite a few pieces for this. It has a 2 set bonus which increases skill duration, and then it has a 4 set bonus which increases your firearm attack, your bullet damage, proportionately to how much HP you've lost, which is a phenomenally strong effect, especially if you've been taking some damage in a Void Intercept boss fight. So if you're going to be mobbing, I would recommend Venom Essence. If you're going to be using this for Void Intercept bosses, I would recommend Annihilation. So get to farming both of those 2 different bosses when you're good to go. And one last thing I also want to say here though is what is very clear is we already know what the new Void Intercept boss's element is, and it actually is poison or toxic. And generally speaking, it seems in this game that when you fight a Void Intercept boss, it tends to drop a set of gear that matches its elemental type. So for example, when you kill Molten Fortress, you get Volcanic, which is generally considered a fire set. And again, like I said, when you kill Swamp Walker, you get the Venom set. So it's possible that because we are getting Ultimate Freyna, that we will most likely be getting another new set for her, or at the very least that could be potentially good on her as well. So it's likely that this might replace one of our 2 options here, depending on what Transcendent mods come with Ultimate Freyna as well. Because just looking back at that quickly before I let you go, at the moment right now, the Transcendent mods that are available for Freyna is Contagion, Neurotoxin Synthesis, Toxic Stimulation, and Venom Synthesis. Now basically how these work is this is good for mobbing, this is good for bossing, aka Void Intercept boss. This is dog shit because it basically lets you put body armor on your allies, which, I mean, what the hell. And then Venom Synthesis essentially turns your ability that you leave a trail behind, aka you kind of like become like a poison Valby. So we don't know which new Transcendent mods. I believe we'll get 2, which 2 new Transcendent mods we will be getting for Ultimate Freyna, and it's possible that one of them will be maybe something that completely transforms her kit, maybe turns her into a character that buffs allies and maybe, you know, sets up their resistances or something like that. And then the other one could be one that makes her even better at mobbing or even better at bossing, or if we're super lucky, that actually increases the effectiveness of both of those. So it is exciting. We don't know what we're gonna get at the moment. Right now we have two relatively okay-ish options when it comes to setting up Freyna for whether you are actually doing just, you know, normal open world content or whether you want to dive into some bosses. I actually find her to be a very fun character to play, especially the mobbing kind of it. I used to play Warlock back in the days in World of Warcraft. I love characters that put dots on enemies and have poison tick on them and that sort of thing. So I'm a huge fan of her as a Descendant, and I'm super excited to see what the ultimate Freyna brings for us. But that's going to be it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know how you are preparing yourself for Ultimate Freyna, or are you deciding to spend all of your time on rather getting ready for the new chill character that we're getting. Of course, we have no idea what her kit is like and what we should be getting for her, even from a reactor perspective, anything like that. And it's possible that it might be shown to us in a video or something like that before the launch of Season 1, which is next week at the recording of this video, or it might be a complete surprise when it drops. Either which way, it's super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Until next video, fucking cheers.